I would like this evening, if I may, talk about several things. About relationship, what is love, and the whole human existence in which is involved our daily living, the enormous problems one has, the conflicts, the pleasures and fears, and that most extraordinary thing one calls death. As we were saying the other day, I think one has to understand this not as a theory, not as a speculative, entertaining concept, but rather as an actual fact that one is the world and world is us. We are the world. And the world is each one of us. And to feel that, to really be committed to it and to nothing else, is, and not only brings about a feeling of great responsibility and an action that must be not fragmentary but as a whole. I think we are apt to forget that our society, the culture in which we live, in which we have been brought up, which has conditioned us, is the result of human endeavor, human conflict, human misery, human suffering. And the two, the culture and the individual and the community, is each one of us. We are not separate from it. Now, to feel this, not as an intellectual idea or a concept, but to actually feel the reality of this, one has to go into the question of what is relationship. Because our life, our existence, is based on relationship. Life is a movement in relationship. And if we do not understand what is implied in relationship, we inevitably not only isolate ourselves, but create a society in which human beings are divided, not only nationally, religiously, but also in themselves, and therefore project what they are in the outer world. I do not know if one has gone into this question deeply for oneself to find out if one can live with another in total harmony, in complete accord, so that there is no barrier, no division, a feeling of complete unity. Because relationship means, doesn't it, to be related. Not in action, not in some project, not in an ideology or a concept, to be totally united in the sense that the division, the fragmentation between individuals, between two human beings, doesn't exist at all at any level. Unless one finds this a relationship, it seems to me that when we try to bring about order in the world, theoretically or technologically, we are bound to create not only deep divisions between man and man, but also will be unable to prevent corruption. Corruption begins in the lack of relationship. I think that is the root of corruption. A relationship, as we know it now, is the continuation of division between individuals. And that word, individual, the root meaning of that word means indivisible. A human being who is in himself not divided, not fragmented, is really an individual. But most of us are not individuals. We think we are, and therefore there is the opposition of the individual against the community. But when one understands not only the meaning of that word in the dictionary sense, but the deep sense of individuality in which there is no fragmentation at all, that is, perfect harmony between the mind, the heart, and the physical organism. It is only then that an individuality exists. And as our present relationship with each other, however intimate or superficial, deep or passing, if we examine it closely, is fragmented. The wife or the husband or the boy or the girl lives in his own cocoon. He lives in his own ambition, personal and egotistic pursuits, envious. And all these contribute to the factor of bringing about an image in himself, and therefore his relationship with another is through that image. And therefore there is no actual relationship. I do not know if one is aware of this image one has, if you are actually aware the structure and the nature of this image that one has built around oneself and in oneself. And each person is doing this all the time. And how can there be a relationship with another if there is the personal drive, envy, competition, greed, and all the rest of those things which are sustained and exaggerated in modern society? How can there be a relationship with another if each one of us is pursuing his own personal achievement, his own personal success? I do not know if one is at all aware of all this. We are so conditioned that we accept that as the norm, as the pattern of life, that each one must pursue his own peculiar idiosyncrasy, his own peculiar tendency, and try to establish a relationship with another in spite of this. That's what we are doing, aren't we? If we examine each one, if one examines oneself closely, isn't that what one is doing? Isn't that what you're all doing? Though you may be married, you go to the office or to the factory, whatever you do, during the whole of the day you pursue that. And she, in our house, with her own troubles, with her own vanities, in all that happens. And where is the relationship between those two human beings? Is it in bed? In sex? And is this a relationship so superficial, so limited, so circumscribed? Is that not in itself corruption? Probably, you will ask, how is one then to live if you do not go to the office, pursue your own particular ambition, envy, your own desire to achieve and attain? If one doesn't do all those things, what is one to do? I think that's a wrong question altogether. Don't you? Because we are concerned, aren't we, in bringing about a radical change in the whole structure of the mind. Because the crisis is not in the outer world, but the crisis is in consciousness itself. And until we understand this crisis, not superficially, not according to some philosopher or some teacher, but actually understand it for ourselves deeply by looking into it, examining it. We shall not be able to bring about a change. And we are concerned with psychological revolution. And the revolution can only take place when there is the right kind of relationship between human beings. And how is such a relationship to be brought about? First, the problem is clear, isn't it? If I'm married, I have a responsibility. Children and all the rest of it. I go to the office or to some work and spend my whole day there. Please share this problem with me, will you? It's your problem, not my problem. It's your life, not my life. It's your sorrow, your trouble, your anxiety, your guilt, the great weight of sorrow. That's one's life. It is that, this battle. And you don't merely, if you listen merely as a description, to a description, then you'll find that you're merely swimming on the surface and not resolving any problem at all. So as it is actually your problem, and the speaker is merely describing the problem, knowing that the description is not the described, and to share this problem together, which is, how can human beings, you and I, find in all this turmoil, mess, hatred, war, destruction, pollution, this terrible thing that are going on in the world, how can we find right relationship? To find that out, it seems to me, one must examine actually what is taking place. See what actually is, not what we'd like to think it should be, or try to change our relationship to a future concept, but actually observe what it is now. And in observing what it is now, the fact, the truth, the actuality of it, then there is a possibility of changing that. As we said the other day again, when there is a possibility, then there is great energy. What dissipates energy is the idea that is not possible to change. So we must look at our relationship as it is now, actual, every day. And in observing what it is, then we shall discover how to bring about a change in that actuality. So we are describing what actually is, which is each one lives in his own world, in his world of ambition, greed, fear, the desire to succeed and all the rest of it. You know what's going on. And we meet each other, husband and wife, or a boy and a girl, in bed. And that's what we call love. Leading separate lives, isolated. Build a wall of resistance around ourselves, self-centered activity. Each one is seeking security psychologically. Each one depending on the other for comfort, for pleasure, for companionship. Because each one is so deeply lonely. Each one demanding to be loved, to be cherished. Each one trying to dominate the other. And seeing this, which is fairly observable, which you can see it for yourself if you observe yourself, what is there any kind of relationship at all? And because there is no relationship between two human beings, though they may have children, house, all the business of it all, actually they're not related. If they have a common project together, that project sustains them, holds them together, but that's not relationship. So, seeing all this, and seeing that if there is no relationship between two human beings, then corruption begins. Not in the outward structure of society, the pollution in the outer phenomenon, but pollution, corruption, destruction begins when human beings have actually no relationship at all, as you haven't. You may hold the hand of another, kiss each other, sleep together. But actually, when you observe very closely, is there any relationship at all? Which means to be related. Not dependent on each other, not escape from your loneliness through another. Not try to find comfort, companionship through another. When you do seek comfort, dependence, and all the rest of it through another, can there be any kind of relationship? Or you're using each other. We are not being cynical, but actually observing what is. And that's not cynicism. So, to find out what is a relationship, what is actually to be related to another, one must understand this question of loneliness. Because most of us are terribly lonely. The older we grow, the more lonely we become. Especially in this country. Have you noticed the old people, what they're like? Have you noticed their escapes, their amusement? They've worked all their life and they want to escape into some kind of entertainment. And to see and to find out a way of living in which we don't use another, psychologically, emotionally, not depend on another, not use another as a means of escape from your own tortures, from your own despairs, from your own loneliness. Now to understand it, that is, to understand what it means to be lonely, have you been ever lonely? You know what it means? That you have no relationship with another, completely isolated. You may be with your family in a crowd or in the office, wherever you are. This thing suddenly comes upon you. Complete sense of utter loneliness with its despair. And till you solve that completely, your relationship becomes a means of escape, and therefore it leads to corruption, leads to misery. So, how to understand this loneliness, this sense of complete isolation? To understand it, one has to look at our own life. And isn't every action that you're doing a self-centered activity? You may occasionally be charitable, occasionally generous, do something without any motive. Those are rare occasions. But actually, the despair can never be dissolved through escape, but by observing it. So we'll come back to this question, which is how to observe. How to observe ourselves so that in that observation there is no conflict at all. Because conflict is corruption. Conflict is waste of energy. Conflict is the battle of our life. From the moment we are born till we die. And is it possible to live without a single moment of conflict? And to do that, to find out for ourselves, one has to learn how to observe. How to observe our whole movement. We went into that the other day. There is observation which becomes harmonious, which is true, when the observer is not, but only observation. We went into that. So I won't go into it again because it'd be rather a waste of time because there's so many things to talk about. And when there is no relationship, can there be love? We talk about it. And love, as we know it, is related to sex and pleasure. Isn't it? No? Some of you say no. Then, when you say no, then you must be without ambition. Then there must be no competition. Then there must be no division. As you and me, we and they. There must be no division of nationality, no division in belief, or the division brought about by belief, division brought about by knowledge. Then only and more you can say you love. But for most people, love is related to sex and pleasure. And all the travail that comes with it, jealousy, envy, antagonisms. You know what happens between man and woman. When that relationship is not true, real, deep, completely harmonious, then how can you have in the world peace? How can there be then an end to war? So relationship is one of the most, or rather the most important thing in life. That means to understand what love is. Surely one comes upon it strangely, without asking for it. When you find out for yourself what it is not, what love is not, then you know what love is. Not theoretically, not intellectually, or verbally, but when you realize actually what it is not, which is a mind that is in competitive, ambitious, mind that is striving, comparing, imitating. Such a mind cannot possibly love. So can you, living in this world, live completely without ambition? Completely never comparing yourself with another. Because the moment you compare, then there is conflict, then there is envy, then there is ambition, then there is the desire to achieve, to go beyond the other. Do listen to all this. It's your life we are talking about. Can a mind and a heart that remembers the hurts, the insults, the things that have made it sensitive, dull. Can such a mind and a heart know what love is? Is love pleasure? And yet that's what we are pursuing, consciously or unconsciously. Our gods are the result of our pleasure. Our beliefs, our social structure, the morality of society, which is essentially immoral, is the result of our pursuit for pleasure. And when you say, I love somebody, is it love? That means no separation, no domination, no self-centered activity. And to find out what it is, one must deny all this. Deny in the sense, see the falseness of it. When you see something false, which we have accepted as true, as natural, as human, when you once see that, and one can never go back to it. You know, when you see a dangerous snake or a dangerous animal, never play with it anymore. Never come near it. Similarly, when you see that love is none of these things, actually see it, feel it, observe it, chew it. Live with it. Be committed to it, totally. Then you know what love is. Then you will know what compassion is, which means passion for everyone. And we have no passion. We have lust, we have pleasure. And the word passion comes from the root of sorrow. We have all had sorrow of some kind or another, losing somebody. The sorrow of self-pity, the sorrow of the human race, both collective and personal. We know what sorrow is. Death of someone whom you consider that you have loved. And when we remain with that sorrow totally, without any escape, without trying to rationalize it, without trying to escape from it through any form, through verbal, through words or through action, when you totally remain with it, completely, without any movement of thought, then you will find out of that sorrow comes passion. Then that passion has the quality of love. Because love has no sorrow. And when one understands this whole question of existence, the conflicts, the battles, you know, the life that one leads, so empty, so meaningless. And the intellectuals try to give a meaning to life, a significance to life. And we also want to find significance to life, because life has no meaning as it is lived. Has it? The constant struggle, the endless work, the misery, the suffering, the travail that one goes through life, all that has no meaning actually. We go through it as a habit. But to find out what the significance of this existence is, one must also understand the significance of death. Because living and dying are together. They're not two separate things. So one must inquire what it means to die, because that's part of our living. Not something in the distant future to be avoided. Only to be faced when one is desperately ill, old age, or an accident, or die on a battlefield. So it is part of our life, our daily life, as it is part of our daily life to live without a single breath of conflict. Part of a life to find out what it means to love. So it is. That is also a part of our existence. The whole field of our existence is not merely to end in death. So one must understand it. Now, how do we understand what death is? Can you understand it when you are dying at the last moment? Unconscious, probably the way you have lived, the strains, the emotional struggles, the ambitions, the drive, all that makes one at the last moment incapable of clear perception. Then there is old age and the fear of old age, the deterioration of the mind. And all the rest of it. So, one has to understand what death is now, not tomorrow. If you observe, thought doesn't want to think about it. It will think about all the things it will do tomorrow. The building the bridges, how to invent new things, better bathrooms, and all the rest of thought can think about. But it doesn't want to think about thought, about death, because it doesn't know what it means. And the meaning of death is that to be found through the process of thought. You are following all this? Are we sharing together all this? Please do share it. When we share it, then we will begin to see the beauty of all this. If you sit there and let the speaker go on, merely listening to his words, then we don't share together. Sharing together implies a certain quality of care, attention, affection, love. And death is a tremendous problem. And the young people may say, why do you bother about it? But it's part of their life. It's part of their life to understand celibacy. Not just, why do you talk about celibacy? That's for the old fogies. That's for the stupid monks. But that also has been a problem for human beings. Not invented by the priests or by the recent Catholics. It has been a problem for 5,000 years. What it means to be celibate. And to find, and to also, that's part of life. Can the mind be completely chaste and not being able to find out how to live a chaste life? One takes vows of celibacy and goes through the tortures. The biological tortures. That is not celibacy. Celibacy is something entirely different. It is to have a mind that is free from all image, from all knowledge, which means understanding the whole process of pleasure and fear, which we went into the other day. So similarly, one has to understand this thing called death. Now, how do you proceed to understand something of which you are terribly frightened? Aren't you, most of us, aren't we frightened of death? Or say, thank God I'm going to die. I've had enough of this life with all the misery of it, the confusion, the shoddiness of it, the petty wrangles, the butchery, the brutality, the violence, all the mechanical things in which one is caught. Thank God all this will end. That's not an answer. Or to rationalize death, or to believe in some incarnation as the whole Asiatic world does, reincarnation. To go into that, to find out what reincarnation means, which is to incarnate, next life, to be born, next life. You to be born in a future existence. And to find out that, you must find out what you are now. What are you now? If you believe in reincarnation, what are you now? A lot of words, a lot of experiences, knowledge, conditioned by various cultures, all the identifications of your life, your furniture, your house, your bank account. Your experience of pleasure and pain. That's what you are, aren't you? Remembrance of things. The failures, the hopes, the despairs, all that you are now. And that is going to be born next life. Lovely idea, isn't it? Or you think that there is a permanent soul, permanent entity in you. Is there anything permanent in you? The moment you say there is a permanent soul, permanent entity, that entity is the result of your thinking, or the result of your hope, because there is so much insecurity, so much, everything is transient, in a flux, in a movement. So when you say there is something permanent, that permanency is the result of your thinking. And thought is of the past. Thought is never free. It can invent anything it likes. So, if you believe in the future birth, then you must know that the future is conditioned by the way you live now. What you do now, what you think, what your acts are, what your way of your ethics. So what you are now, what you do now, matters tremendously. But those people who believe in a future birth don't give a pin what happens now. Just a matter of belief. So, how do you find out what death means? Living with vitality, with energy, healthy. Not when you are insane or unbalanced or ill, or when you have, not at the last moment. Now, how do you find out? Knowing the organism will inevitably wear out. Like every machinery must wear out. But unfortunately, our machinery we use so disrespectfully. Don't we? So, how do you find out what it means to die? Knowing the physical organism comes to an end. Have you ever thought about this? Thought, you can't think about it. Have you ever experimented with this? To find out what it means to die psychologically, inwardly. Not how to find immortality, because eternity, with that which is timeless, is now. Not in some distant future. And to inquire into that, one must understand the whole problem of time. Not only the chronological time by the watch, but the time the thought has invented as a gradual process of change. So how does one find this strange thing that we'll all have to meet one day or another? How do you find out? Can one die psychologically today? Die to everything that you have known. Take, for instance, one thing, to die to your pleasure, die to your attachment, your dependence. End it without arguing, without rationalizing, without trying to find ways and means of avoiding it. You've understood my question? Not quite? So, you know what it means to die, not physically, but psychologically, inwardly, which means to end to that, to put an end to that which has continuity. You understand this? To put an end to your ambition. Because that's what's going to happen when you die, won't it? You can't carry it over and sit next to God. You have to, when you die actually, you have to end so many things without any argument. Can't say to death, hold on a minute, let me finish my job. Let me finish my book, the things which I have not done. Let me heal the hurts which I have given to others. You have no time. So to find out, to live a life now, today, in which there is always an ending. Ending to everything that you began. Not your office, of course, or but inwardly to end all the knowledge that you have gathered. Knowledge being your experience, your memories, your hurts, the pain, the comparative way of living, comparing ourselves always with somebody else. To end all that every day, so that your mind the next day is fresh and young, and such a mind can never be hurt. That is innocency. So one has to find out for oneself what it means to die. Therefore no fear. Therefore every day is a new day. And I really mean this. One can do this so that your mind and your eyes see life as something totally new. And that is eternity. That is the quality of a mind that has come upon this timeless state, because it has known what it means to die every day to everything that it has collected during the day. Then in that there is love, surely. Love is something totally new every day. But pleasure is not. Pleasure has a continuity. Love is always new. Therefore it is its own eternity.